All right. Good evening, everybody. Happy Friday. I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful day at MAGFest with lots of good stuff to come. Welcome to What's Going On with Serious Games, contemporary perspectives on games beyond entertainment. We are all academics, so none of us know how to be brief in our titles, or maybe that's just me. But I've got a wonderful, wonderful panel lineup for you today. My job is simply drag all of these amazing people into this room to talk to you about serious games. So I'll briefly start by introducing myself. My name is Erin. Many of you may know me as the person responsible for that giant hat downstairs in Expo Hall C. Thank you. But my day job is I'm a professor at NJIT, and I get to do collaborative work with all of these phenomenal people. So I'm going to stop talking and let them introduce themselves, starting down at the end with Asher Marks.
Oh my goodness, okay. Hey guys, Asher Marks. I'm actually a pediatric oncologist who made my way to serious games through VR-supported or VR-based support groups for our adolescents with cancer who did not want to come together, did not feel their best. So we were able to let them choose avatars. Happy to talk that more later. That's where it started. And around six years ago, I met Kim, and we co-founded the Yale Center for Immersive Technologies and the XRPeds lab within exploring immersive technologies with kids. How to use it with kids best. So.
All right. Kim Hieftje.
Hello. Kim Hieftje. I'm an associate professor of pediatrics. Stuff that Asher just said. We're co-founder, co-director of the Yale Center for Immersive Tech and for Kids, and also XRPeds. I've been doing serious games for about 16 years now. I've done a lot of projects. Mostly, my Ph.D.'s in health, behavior, and education psychology. So I've done a lot of games, been on a lot of teams that have made games around behavior change and mental health. Kind of all over the place. It's been quite a journey, and I'm also the editor-in-chief of the Games for Health journal. If you've ever stumbled across that.
Airports and newsstand.
It's a good journal.
All right. Up next, we've got BK Tian.
Hi everyone. You can call me VK. I am but a humble first-year Ph.D. student, but I have been doing research in games for the past couple of years. And I know Erin from when she was my lab manager, actually. So I'll be sharing about the work that we did together. But yeah, before I was in serious games research, I also did arts of other kinds, including like garment construction and screen and printmaking, that kind of stuff. So coming from like a studio arts background going into digital.
And last but certainly not least, Travis Faas.
Hello, everyone. I'm Travis Faas. I'm a faculty at a university in Indiana called Ball State University. You can get your one laugh. You're welcome. Fun story. I'm not the person responsible for Big Hat here, but the first time that I met Erin was at GDC when she was showing her Big Hat there, and I told her you should submit your thing to MAGFest Indie Video Game Showcase, not Ms. to the Indie Arcade, and she did. I teach game development. I actually have the enviable title that has game development in its words. I do a lot of stuff sort of around social learning online, that kind of stuff. If you've been here at prior MAGFest for whatever reason and went down and saw an upside-down bicycle in Indie Arcade, that was mine. Maybe I'll have something new here next year. We'll see.
All right, so that is our wonderful panel. We're going to get exciting now, and I'd like to start everyone off with the same question. We can go down the line or popcorn or however you'd like. But I want to know how each of you personally would define the term serious game. So if anybody has thoughts, opinions they want to share, kick us off.
I don't want to put Asher's on the end here. I'm not going to make him do this. I actually hate the word serious games. It's not a game. It's what the literature and the field is called serious games, but I actually don't like that because games aren't always have to be serious, right? Should be fun and playful and enjoyable. So I don't like that term. I prefer more like transformational games. I think Shell Games has done a great job to try to redefine what we think of serious games. I think social impact games is a great term. So I don't know if I have a definition for serious games because I don't like what it's become or the kind of the connotation behind it. But I like the other words better, is what I'm trying to say.
Awesome. Anybody else have thoughts on defining what a serious game is? Yes, absolutely. Let's see if I can figure that out. How about now?
Ooh.
Oh.
Yeah. Powerful.
All right. Travis?
The easy one is it's like games that aren't just for fun. But I do think back to when I teach in the classroom, I like to refer to these 4 types of fun by an individual, Nicole Lazaro. And she breaks it up into 3 that are like really fun, people fun, hard fun. And there's one called serious fun, which essentially is exactly as you would initially, your gut check would be like, yeah, it's games but not for games. Like the whole point of playing the game actually has nothing to do with the game itself. Like, well, I'm playing Halo, but I'm actually playing Halo to relax. I don't care that it's Halo specifically or even that it's a game. And so that's generally how I approach, like, if we were to define serious games. But break down the balls also, like maybe games don't always have to be games. Is horse race test a game? I don't know. For the 2 of you in the room that knows what it is, and I'm still like, man, anyway.
I was going to say, are we going to get into the what is a game discussion? Because we could be here all night.
Let's do that.
Let's get into that.
Ooh.
All right. Anybody have a definition of game they'd like to share? Or a really strong opinion about it?
Not going there.
All right, I guess we're not touching that. So I guess I'd like to start then with talking about everybody's design and development processes. Kim and Asher, I'd love to start with you, kind of working in healthcare and health behavior spaces. What does design and development of games for healthcare look like in your world?
I feel like we may have different answers for this.
Yeah, we might have, because he's
Yeah.
the doctor, well, I'm really a doctor
Well,
too.
you say you're the real doctor.
I'm the real
You're
doctor.
smart doctor.
So I'm the brains, he's the practice. What was the question again?
The development process.
Development process. Sorry. We had a drink before this, just so you know. The development process. I think my big takeaway and what I've learned over the last kind of almost 2 decades is that researchers think this way, and game developers, game designers think this way. And sometimes it is very hard to find that bridge where we can speak the same language. So over the last many years, we've designed processes and ways to think about how can we come up with like a shared language, right, to make sure we're all on the same page. Games, when you're creating games that have like a goal, especially when you're changing behaviors or trying to change attitudes or intentions or perceptions, that can be really hard. Like for all of you, I'm sure you've thought, like when we think about New Year's resolutions, right? We come up with all these behavior changes, things we're going to do different, and then we fail by like February. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. And 1, behavior change is really, really hard. And 2, we can only really change one behavior at a time. So when you think about your goals, pick one. That's my health behavior change, take home. But I think having some sort of process, for us, we call it a game playbook, and we published a bit on this. Erin just published.
Was, I think, first author.
First author on an update to a paper we just did. And it really is about having these kind of shared systems and documents so we can both thinking about learning goals and behavior change goals, keeping those in mind here, but also thinking about game design and the importance of what game designers know about how to make game engaging and fun, and you want to play it, and and the mechanics work well, and how can we come together? And I think that's the hardest part.
Erin set me up really nicely and brought up Cutie on the screen. So
I was going to say,
Yeah.
would you like to talk through an example
Let's
that
talk
maybe was
I
featured in
love
this recent paper?
examples. Yeah, examples are great. So the Cutie is a game that we designed. So I think the big difference with us is it's not that we come up with the mechanic or we come up with a narrative and say this would make a great game. We start with where do we need to go, which I think gives us a lot of guardrails and makes things a little bit more difficult. And so this was a project that was funded by the CDC when the CDC believed in medicine and viruses. And the funding was to create a game to improve infection control rates in our neonatal ICU. And initially they were like, VR is cool. I think it would be a good way to teach people to wash their hands. We're like, yeah, sure, give us the money. And they were like, just kidding, that's a terrible idea, but here's what we're gonna do. And so this process started with us actually talking to the folks that this involved the most. So we talked to parents who were NICU parents, we talked to NICU nurses, we talked to infection control. And what we found was that our initial concept, the concept being that parents didn't know how to wash their hands, was completely wrong. What we actually had to be looking at, based on the data that we had from focus groups and interviews, was parents not necessarily feeling that their germs could hurt their children. And they just were not used to the process of washing hands. So instead of having a game that we initially envisioned where you're in a NICU room and you look at your hands and they're full of germs and you've got to wash them and do the thing, what we actually did was end up a game more focused on the behavioral change models that Kim's talking about, where it just gets the player into the habit of washing their hands. And then we had to make this attractive and engaging and fun. So the narrative behind this is that the Cutie is from, we said not an alien, from another dimension. We could talk about the issues with calling it an alien a little bit later, but this is a creature from another dimension. It's the cutest creature in the universe, and it is in a lab, and you need to take care of it without infecting it. But while doing that, you need to post it to social media to get as many likes as you want. So you're dealing with an iPad, you're dealing with your phone, you're dealing with props. These are all things that parents are actually dealing with as well, and put them at risk for infecting their children. So when you pick up the iPad, you may find that you now have germs on the iPad. You've got to disinfect the iPad. You've got to wash your hands under the Purell, begin again. And so this goes on until eventually you finish this VR game and you are used to constantly worrying about cleaning your hands. So it's that behavioral change, the almost kind of unintended consequence of a fun mechanic. There are also kind of more didactic information that needs to come across in a game like this that you just can't necessarily work into the mechanics. So the boring part and kind of the cheating part is that we had these updates kind of in between levels where it would talk more about what are germs, what is germ theory, really very basic stuff.
But you're making it sound like it's boring. It was like newscast. It was really cute. It was like breaking news.
We were very clever about it, but it's more about doing than telling, and
That's
we
true.
did have to tell at some points.
That's true.
So.
Awesome. I'm gonna bring things over to VK now. Coming from more of a studio arts background, what does your design and development approach look like? And feel free to talk about specific projects. I've got your slides handy.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm also interested in those end goals of behavior change or perspective change, but I would say I approach it from more of a tactical media approach. So for those who aren't familiar, tactical media is like this concept where art projects can be used to infiltrate mainstream media, but in a subversive way that gets you to think more deeply about your interaction patterns and just other high level concepts like that. So for that, I'm most interested in designs based on discomfort or out-immersive elements, in games for entertainment. I think a lot of designers are all about immersion. That's the number one thing that they focus on. But there's also this opposite concept of out-immersion where you're still extremely engaged with the game, but in a way that's drawing your attention to things that are outside the game itself, such as drawing your attention to starting a dialogue with the designer as a fellow human being, or things like that. So one I guess my own small example of that might be my Underwatch project, in which I, along with Erin and a couple other teammates, designed this social media app called Snapgram. It basically functions like Instagram, but what happens is we recruited a bunch of participants to play test it in a research study and told them that it's just a study about gamified social media interactions. Turns out when you spend a long enough time on Snapgram, strange things start to occur in the background, like you're getting these announcements about third-party data trades, and like your face starts to appear in the advertisements as like deep-faked images. And so, yeah, we designed this app with like very uncomfortable elements, like add a surprise to the players in order to hopefully get them to reflect on topics of like commercial mass surveillance and data privacy, and kind of like lure them in with their typical interaction patterns and then jar them out of it. Yeah.
Awesome. Travis, what about your design and development process? How's that informed by your background? How do you approach that?
Do we want to get into all control stuff again?
We can get into all control stuff.
Design and no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the paper we were writing. We're like, how do I even begin to describe my design process? It's weird thoughts that I have. There's a combination of two, I suppose. My interests are a little bit different, than I don't really care so much about behavior change. I do care about learning, which can be behavior change. It can be all sorts of other things as well. I'm really social in that aspect. I find humans interesting and what they're doing interesting, and usually whatever they're doing is learning stuff that we haven't even started thinking about yet, and creating cultures that we haven't even started tapping into yet. So for instance, like, I don't understand this horse race test thing that's happening that some of you understand, and some of you are like, what is this? I don't understand, and I find it fascinating. And that probably could be used for something, and like that would send me down a rabbit hole, and I'd start like reading everything about that and being like, well, maybe I could bend this into something that could be educational, and what that would be, because there's this thing that's clearly a good hook for people that we haven't even started thinking about yet. The other side of it too is I care very deeply about nature, so I guess if we go to those slides as well, since there's some things out there, kind of, sort of. This is kind of educational, kind of not, but it's the thing that I'm like fixated on right now. What if you could play with an oak tree? Or what if an oak tree could play with you? And that's kind of my design process. Those are the two sides of things. Either I see humans and the fact that they're live streaming themselves baking cookies, and I'm like, that's weird. What can we do with that? Or I get a weird thought in my head and I start following it and realize that there's a whole field of research in that called more than human design. And that's kind of the design process. There's end goals there. I have questions about like how do we turn that into something that we'd call educational, of like, well, if an oak tree could play with you or you could play with an oak tree, then probably at some point you could have a more nature-oriented experience, which then leads to some sort of like conservation actions. But first thought is, what if I could play a game with an oak tree? That's it.
Awesome. We've got a really great diversity of approaches here, which I think is awesome and was definitely intentional when I put this panel together. One of the things I'd also love to hear about, and this is for anyone who wants to chime in, is where do you see the greatest potential for serious games or games for beyond entertainment purposes? And I have a feeling with 4 panelists, we're probably going to get 4 very different answers. So I'm really excited to hear about your thoughts on these specifically.
Let's get one answer. I can start if you guys need some time tonight. So where do you see the greatest potential?
Yeah, what are you excited about?
I think Roblox and I don't want it to be Roblox, but Roblox, Fortnite, and Minecraft are the future. And I don't even think we know the full ramifications of that yet. But that is probably some of the biggest potential. So many kids are growing up in those virtual spaces in the way that we are not natives in anymore. And they understand that like their games are always semi-game, like their lives are always semi-gamified and semi-virtual. And that can be used for a lot of good if we are intentional about it. And we'll see it in the coming years, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
Awesome. Other good spaces for potential. Maybe Kim and Asher in the healthcare space down at the other end?
Yeah. I think for me, I get super excited. I think, working at the Journal, I get to see all the cool stuff that's coming in. And I'll tell you, we still get a ton of stuff around the Wii and the Kinect, which is always funny to me. Like still, these like dead systems.
In 2026.
Right. All the time I'm seeing this. But what I get excited about is the newer stuff I'm seeing, like the integration of physiological data, right? Your heart rate, your eye tracking, your breaths, like how we can use this kind of our own bodies and our own information to control mechanics in games and to learn about ourselves in games. I get really, really, really excited about that. And then I also get excited just about the new tech that we have. When we think about mixed reality, especially how we can bring digital content into our real world. And it's not just bringing it in, it's not like Pokemon Go, but we can interact with that content. I can fill this entire wall here with artwork, right? And put people in here that holograms that can talk to me and I can interact with, and I can put a digital cup on this table here, right? I think I get super excited about where we know the tech will be. It's not there yet, but I get way ahead of myself and where I want it to be and where I see the future. Yeah.
Trying really hard not to say the bad word of AI, but for medical applications, I'm excited. Erin, do you mind bringing up the slide with Navi? Did I not do one for Navi?
I don't think you did one.
I didn't do one for Navi. I knew I didn't want to talk about it. All right. So a big issue in healthcare is the so Navi is that kind of snarky looking guy there in the cab there. So I always like looking at games and these technologies as a solution to a problem. And anytime that someone comes with me to a concept, I always start with, what are you trying to solve and why is this the technology to do it? And within the healthcare space, reimbursements are going down and inflation is going up, which means that the first healthcare workers to get cut are those that do not bring in revenue to a hospital. In a hospital, those are social workers, those are patient navigators, those are mental health support. The story that I always tell is that 8 years ago, my clinic used to be me, a fellow nurse practitioner, social worker, patient navigator, all kinds of ancillary staff. And now most days it's just me sitting alone in a back room trying to crunch through 20 cancer patients in a day, and it's a broken system. And we need help, and our patients need help. They need help finding resources. The internet's a hot mess. When my patients go out on the internet to try to find good resources, I don't know what they're going to come back with, and then I've got to spend the time kind of re-educating and re-earning their trust. But large language models that we have developed ourselves with our expertise and with the appropriate guardrails, and that are an attractive package, one that our adolescents and young adults may actually want to use, because there are plenty of terrible chatbots out there that are run on AI, but something that's actually attractive to them that are designed by professionals with good knowledge. I think there's actually some really good, exciting potential there to do real good, as long as we can figure out the guardrails and frankly take the emotional component out of it. I am not for mental health. I'm not for AI for mental health by any means, but AI for giving good information in a straightforward and understandable way, I think is really exciting.
Awesome. So we have a lot of potential in serious games, but I think all of you can probably recognize that developing games that are not just for games for entertainment is kind of hard. So I want to do a quick rapid fire thing here because I've been notified we've got 5 minutes left. We're just cooking along.
Right. This is great.
What's the hardest part of making serious games?
I can say this, and I'll make it quick because I feel like I'm talking too much. We made this game called You're the Cicadas, which is up here. And again, loosely defined as a game because I think it's an interactive virtual reality narrative, whatever. My goal is, like, who cares what a game is defined, right? It can be whatever it wants it to be. For me, it's this. It's called You're the Cicadas. It's a story, it's a narrative story about grief and loss and what that looks like over time for a parent that has lost a child. Took us 3 years, so much work. I don't know who's going to...
How big was the team?
Well, it was me, you, and a couple other people.
Like 5 people.
Yeah, but it took us 3 years. And then you put it out there, and then who's going to ever see it and play it? And I think that's the hardest part about serious games. These are never going to be things that are going to be mainstream or like really make it out into the world in some sort of like real profound way. We have a QR code if you ever want to check it out. We're going to get it up on the store this month, and I'm super excited.
Be on the Meta Store.
Yes,
yeah.
on the Meta Store. But I think that's, for me, that's what it is. It's not being able to, knowing that the stuff you do usually has a purpose. It's not going to go beyond reaching the general population in the world, and it may die on a shelf because that's you get the money to make it, not
issues.
Yeah.
All right, VK, I'm going to pass the ball to you. What's hard? What's difficult?
Well, I think this also comes from a place of inexperience as a person relatively new to the field, but I think getting your point to actually come across is really extremely difficult. Like, for example, on the Underwatch game, one of the problems we had was that about a third of participants never noticed that their faces were in the ads. Like, they did not notice at all that there were deepfakes, not just in one ad, but every single ad in their feeds by the end of the game. So I feel that a lot of the times, like, what you expect as a designer, and especially if you're kind of taking this arts approach of like sort of top-down messaging, which I think is like a problem with my approach to this game, but it's just that like a lot of times if you're looking for behavioral change, you're fighting really hard against very ingrained habits. Like as soon as they saw the sponsored content tag, like they immediately just like willfully ignored it. So it's hard to change behavior through messaging when it's so ingrained, I guess.
All right, and then I'm going to close us off with Travis, and then we'll do one last question for the road.
Difficult on serious games.
What's difficult about serious games?
I think the hardest part is not relying on game designs that already exist. You're like, well, I'm just going to make Legend of Zelda, but make it serious. Awful, terrible, but you see it so often.
Oh, we do have a full hour.
Yes.
Excellent. Awesome, so we can all talk a little longer in our upbeat panel about all of the difficult things about making serious games and all of the problems in the world.
10 more minutes of Legend of Zelda.
Great.
Rant.
All right, Travis, go ahead and talk some more about Legend of Zelda now. My biggest annoyance with I've been as part of so many teams where it boils down to it's just a series of quiz questions, and that's not fun, right? Like you don't let the design space speak to you. Instead, you work backwards from this thing, and you don't say like, well, here's the constraints, and now what's interesting and cool about this? Where can we actually play with it in ways that you're doing in this? Like, well, we're going to force them to wash their hands a bit, and they're not even thinking about that. That's the skill that they're training.
so many teams I see devolve into that, when actually like every one of those constraints is fun and interesting to explore and should be given the time that it deserves.
Awesome. So as kind of a follow-up to that, are there serious games out there that you have seen that are not your own work that you think do some of these things really well and really engage with some of the playful content rather than being maybe one of these, it's a quiz with some game-like elements? What have you seen out there that's just really, really good? Because there's got to be good stuff out there.
I can give a pretty basic example. A game developed out of Colorado Children's Hospital. It's VR based, and it's really simple. It is basically you are a scuba diver, and you need to look down. And as you look down, you descend, and you end up on the ocean floor, and you're just kind of exploring and looking at things. And it sounds really boring, and like there's nothing to it. But as a practitioner, it was brilliant because what this game has let us do is take patients who need lumbar punctures. These are needles that go in the spine where we take out spinal fluid and then we inject chemotherapy. It lets us take our teens who would typically need fairly, relatively dangerous sedation meds that they would then take hours to recover from, and do these procedures without sedation because they are so distracted by this. And not only are they distracted, the fact that the game is making them look down means that it's automatically getting them in the position that we need them to be, which is sitting, looking down so that their kind of spinal processes, pull apart. So this is a game that looks like a pure distraction, but is actually a procedural tool. So for me, that was one that's been really cool.
Fish can be great. How many of you have been feeding your MAGFish regularly?
I love that game.
Who else has seen some really good stuff out there? I know you all play a lot of serious games and take a look at a lot of things. Kim, you got one?
Yeah, I was going to say, I love games that unexpectedly start conversations in a serious way. My colleague and friend Paul Darvasi, I don't know if anybody knows of him. He's an English teacher who now has a Ph.D. and has his own game studio. He would teach high school students using Gone Home. Instead of having them read books, he wrote an entire curriculum around Gone Home, about the themes behind it, about the setting, about the music that's used, the characters, the arch and the story. He used a game instead of a book to teach kids about literature. And I thought that was amazing. And the other one I would say is that started some wonderful conversations was that dragon cancer, which I can't get through it. I don't know if anybody's ever, it's a story about parents that their child has cancer and then eventually dies from cancer. He's a toddler. But it's a really beautiful, gripping story. But it reminded us that games can have a lot of power and they can have a very strong voice. So not baked in the way that we think about making these games in a systematic way, but Papers, Please is another great example. Things that just start conversations that you can have kids play and then we talk about it, right?
So what's interesting about what you just said, it goes back to the first question, what is a serious game?
Yeah.
I don't think Gone Home was ever intended to be, quote, a serious game.
Papers, Please.
Or Papers, Please. But
Yeah.
when you put it in context and just put a scaffolding around it,
Yeah.
you can do a lot.
Yeah.
There's actually more control.
So speaking of some of the things you've been playing that maybe aren't coming out of the serious game space, but maybe have some kind of additional meaning imbued with it or not, one of the questions I have been dying to ask this panel is, what have you been playing lately and why are you enjoying it? Just in general in your life. You all like games, right? I hope.
Love Solitaire.
Yeah.
Solitaire.
I just platinumed Ghosts of Eyote.
Nice.
Just about 5 or 6 hours into Expedition 33 and loving it. And then, while I'm supposed to be on Zoom calls, I'm usually playing Dredge in the background.
Oh, Dredge is so good.
What are the rest of y'all playing?
Yeah, do you want to go?
Down at this end, Travis, VK?
Go.
I've been playing a lot of Slay the Spire, preparing for STS2 in March. In terms of serious games, I don't know if you all would consider this, but Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. And yeah, I feel like that game definitely, it forces you to change your perspective on things. And I'm also excited about Baby Steps, which I haven't gotten a chance to try yet.
Excellent. Travis?
All right, so we'll do truthful answer first. Truthful answer is I've been playing a lot of Overwatch, which is not healthy for me, but I've still been playing a lot of it. A lot of Final Fantasy XIV, and a lot of Reverse 1999, which is a gacha game, which is also not healthy for me, but I still enjoy it. But more interestingly, I think about a year ago, I downloaded Pikmin Bloom, and it's kind of cold out, so I've been playing a little bit less of that. Those of you who are on the mushrooms right now, please stop. I want my spinning tops. But this is actually, as I think about it, has changed me for a little bit healthier. I like to take walks anyway, so it began to encourage me to do things I like to do anyway. If you aren't familiar with Pikmin Bloom, it's another game by Niantic, so it's Pokemon Go, but for Pikmin. And you collect little Pikmin, and you go for walks with them. So I encourage you walking, and I encourage you pressing a button on your phone, and for the most part, putting your phone away. I think I have like 15,000 steps a day with my Pikmin, and they're fun little guys. They're great. It's made me a little bit healthier, and I play it every day with my wife, so it's probably like what I've been playing recently that's serious. Catch me afterwards for my Pokemon Go rant. I have a rant.
So because
I have games.
Oh, great. Kim, what are you playing?
Well, so my husband's European, and if he heard me pronounce these, he would just be laughing so hard. But I just downloaded the new soccer game, like the Ecuador. I don't know if you guys. Thank you. That's why I had my phone out, because I was going to try to pronounce it, but now I don't have to. How do you say it? Despelote? Yeah. Okay. Despelote. Okay. Yeah. I'm so excited to start that one. And this is another one I'm going to butcher. And maybe somebody here could help. It's a board game that's been made, into a game. It's Dorfromantik. I don't know. Did I say it right? Yeah. Okay.
Right, we're getting thumbs up.
I tried to say that, and my husband laughed his ass. He was like, "You're not saying this right."
A different way every time you say it. It's just like 2 weeks.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, we're not doing it right apparently to stuffy Europeans. But so I'm playing that game, and then. Yesterday, I played this game, and I've been playing it, I kid you not, for over a decade. It's called Toy Blast, and it's the dumbest game ever. It's just a matching game, but it's very satisfying. And I'll tell you the level I'm at. Right now I'm on stage 53 because I ran out of levels at 11,500.
Wow.
They're like, you've completed all the levels. Come back later, in a couple months. And now they're just letting me replay old ones. But yeah, 11,000 levels. Pretty proud of that.
This is what your serious games professionals are playing, so you should all be taking notes. I've got one more question for the panel before I want to open up the floor for Q&A from the audience, which is, I'm sure we have a lot of people out here who are maybe interested in making serious games, maybe already making serious games, doing something else with games research. What advice would you have for someone who is interested in kicking off maybe a career or a hobby in making some sort of serious games, for lack of a better term? VK, I think I'm actually going to put the ball in your court for a moment. You're new-ish to the field, kind of closer to that beginner stage, and probably remember it a little bit better. What advice do you wish someone had given you when you started out?
I think the thing that helped me the most, that I just completely lucked into, was being around cool people. So I guess I found myself in that situation through doing a master's program in games, and I'm now doing the same thing in a PhD program. But if that's not an option for you, I would say just find a group of people, even a small group of people can create a quite polished product if you're committed enough. So even if you don't have the skills right now, as long as you have the right people beside you, you can do it.
Awesome. Travis, you work as an educator. You are chatting with the next generation of game developers. You've got students who probably want to go into serious games. What would you tell them?
I don't know if they want to, honestly. Honestly, I think a lot of game developers wind up falling into it because it is a slightly more fundable area. But if it is something that you want to get into, go for it. Like, I think that I have some good friends who have made educational games or serious games, and their take on it is great because they don't have to be academic. And that's actually a strength, right? Like, we have certain goals and constraints of academics, like we have to please other masters sometimes, whether that's publishing, whether that's funding, whether that's the constraints of the university. But they could make games that are educational and fantastic that don't have to deal with any of those things. Whether that's like a programming bot game, whatever, that's the one that comes to mind. To even like some of the little interactables that you would know this individual's name, I can't remember, that are like, we use game technology to teach stuff, and I just use it to make like a virtual essay sort of thing, NYU adjacent. But just go for it, like make it happen. And probably you're gonna find that there is funding out there for it in spaces. If you can get up on the App Store and get it in front of, especially like homeschoolers would be interested in these things quite often. There's a bigger field than you would expect sometimes.
Awesome. Down at the end, maybe Kim?
Yeah, well,
advice?
I was going to say, check out Unity for Humanity. I've been funded by them to do Year of the Cicadas. Anybody can do that. They'll give you a chunk of money to make, and it's related to serious games, social impact, like games, right? That would be my one thing. I know it's hard when you're like, I don't have money, I want to do this. But there's little pots. Epic Games has there's little grants out there, pockets for indie developers. The second thing is there's a lot of software out there too. Like you don't need to do something like magical and fancy. There's just a lot of stuff that you can use yourself if you want to create your own game. And again, I think the other thing too is it doesn't have to be a game. Like pitch out this idea that it has to have levels and scores and all. It can be whatever you want it to be, and be open and be okay with being weird and be okay with it just being your own voice and your own thing you own. I'm a big person around narrative, so if you got a story to tell, think about how you might want to bring that story to life, right? And there's tons of software and things you can do that's already out there that you don't have to have, a fancy degree or be able to code even in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then Asher, your advice down at the end, our resident medical doctor.
I was gonna say, yeah. Can you bring up the slide with Shady Grove?
Yes.
So
there we go.
I think that the lesson behind this story is to find topics that you're passionate about and talk to the people in that field and pitch to them why a game is a good idea for them to pursue and or to fund. So this is a game being designed with Law 146, which is an anti-trafficking organization. And we're working directly with their social workers whose extent of experience and understanding of gaming really ends at like Wordle. But when we kind of pitched this idea that we could make a game to help them expand their anti-human trafficking curriculum, they were thrilled. And it took a couple years, but they eventually found the funding to support it, and now we're helping them develop this game. And so it lets us do what we love, which is design games and make the world a better place, and it gets their voice out there. So I think going to the back to the point of hanging out with cool people, also hang out with people you wouldn't normally hang out with. Find their passions and infuse your passion and do something awesome.
Awesome. This is great. So we are at just about 10:15. So I'm going to bring up our Q&A slide, which just has some contact info for all of our panelists. I am going to get rid of my microphone and pass everybody down one so we can pass Asher's to the audience. And I'd love to grab some audience questions, or you can shout them out and I'll repeat them. So I've seen a hand up over here, so we'll start over here. Just stand up and shout and I'll repeat into the mic.
So how does strategic simulations fit into the world of serious games, such as like Model UN,
Awesome question. So for those online or listening in via the mic, the question was, how do strategic simulations such as Model UN, wargaming, business wargaming fit into the world of serious games, if at all?
They were probably the original serious games. Like that's essentially the foundation, and they're still used quite often for these things. I don't know if I have more to say than that. Like, if you go to like Gen Con, you will see board games that are developed for educations on all sorts of topics on these all the time, and they're fantastic. Like, they're extremely good at what they do, inside and outside of the classroom setting.
Awesome. All right. Do we have another question? I see a hand here up front, and then I'll start bouncing towards the back.
One of you, I don't remember, mentioned that there are often miscommunication problems between video game workers and game researchers and serious game makers because they aim for different things, and so sometimes it's difficult to make a serious game together. So why does those miscommunication problems happen? Like, what do each of them aim for, and why do these problems happen then?
Great question. I'm going to say Kim or Asher, does one of you want to take that one on?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a ton of examples of really bad serious games. But I think it comes down to is like, game designers are expert in game design, right? And researchers are experts in research, and they're different sets of skills. And so if we're like, we need a game that is going to teach about time management, and the game designer's like, I've got a great game where you go around and you catch things in a bucket as it falls. And you're like, that's not going to teach anything, right? Or like we talked about the horrible thing when it's just a bunch of knowledge questions. When changing knowledge does not change anything. You can throw a ton of facts at somebody and it's not going to change their behavior. People need to practice skills. And those of us that do research, that we understand how to change behaviors, how to change, attitudes and intentions towards these things. I think game designers don't. So it's trying to find that place of like, we need them to learn this skill. We need your understanding of a game designer of how to make a fun mini game or activity or game that can do that skill. So it's a lot of, you can't really hand it off. You can't say, we want to make a game about human trafficking and then hand it over to a game development team to make. They have no idea, right? Nor should they. It's not their responsibility. We're the experts coming in. So it's yeah.
I think a lot of times, and as if the cardigan and the balding didn't do it enough, I'm going to date myself. I think a lot of times we end up kind of like that character in Office Space, when he's like, I talk to the engineers and then I talk to the clients. And they're like, well, why can't the clients just talk to the engineers? And they're like, well, the engineers can't talk to the clients. And I'm a people person, yeah. And like there's some truth to that. I think a lot of the time our job is to translate even some of the really most basic things. Like we had this amazing six hour sit down of brainstorming with Lab 146 and the development studio that was working on the game, and we're 2 hours in before we realized that the development studio keeps using the term vertical slice versus horizontal slice, and Lab 146 had no idea what they were talking about the whole time, and they were thinking the opposite, and we were 2 hours in and knee deep, and we were talking about totally different things. And so there's a true, not only cultural difference, but a language difference. And it's got to be interpreted back and forth when you're dealing with people with such high expertise on such different ends of the spectrum.
Great answer. All right, I saw some hands. I see one way in the back in the blue hair, blue headpiece. Yes, you, yes.
Hello? Okay, awesome. Hi, I'm also a PhD student. I'm also really interested in game designs and serious games specifically. And a common challenge that I encounter in research is sort of like understanding how you develop learning assessments when you're thinking about serious games, if it's even necessary for the serious game that you're going about. So I'm just curious about how you guys are thinking about assessing whatever behavior change, whatever learning change, whatever like knowledge acquisition that you're aiming for in your research.
That is a great question. Anybody want to talk about assessing learning and behavior change?
I mean, I can, but I want to give some other people time to.
Assessing learning and behavior change. So my assessments tend to come from a sociocultural approach to it. So like the concept of, can this person participate in the community? And so it's not a checklist of like, can they answer all these questions correctly, but rather when put into a situation where they need to do the thing or interact with that community, can they provide something of value to that community? Which usually means as you have them going through that game, either are you seeing them make good reactions within the game, and or in a community that you are having that game designed for, afterwards you put them in that space and they are able to access the right resources, talk to the right people, and kind of take the right actions to actually to do something right in that community. It's a little bit harder to get like a real good measure on it, but it just means you gotta sit there and watch and be like, yeah, they're contributing something, and it might not have been what I would have expected originally, but they're actually doing something good for those people.
Great answer. All right, I've seen several other hands in the gray crown with the headphones.
Now I'm really annoyed because it's not the phrase I wanted.
So one thing I heard brought up a lot during especially the serious games used for medical purposes is a lot of usage of VR and a lot of usage of a lot newer technologies. How often is it brought up of the kind of back and forth between how much impact and how much immersion can we get from these technologies versus the accessibility? A lot of people or a lot of institutions can't afford VR headsets, can't afford a lot of this technology that uses it, or even just can't use it on the technology that they have. A lot of hospitals are working with like computers from the 90s.
That's a great question, and this is the exact right group of people to ask it to.
Yeah. I'm gonna hand it to Asher, but I do have a thought here, and it's always the question we ask when people come to us and they want to make a game in VR. And the very first thing we ask them is, why VR? Like, comes to people like, it's cool, like, oh, Apple Vision Pro, we want to develop, but why? And who are you trying to reach? Because don't develop it on something that people, it's not even like you said, in a hospital where the computers, like, it's not even accessible, right? Don't do that. But Asher has probably more to say about that.
Great.
Yeah.
As the co-director of the XRPeds lab, I like to say I think VR kind of sucks.
No, we have so many projects and we do it.
We work a lot with VR. I hate gaming on VR. I hate something on my face. I hate feeling nauseous and headachy. However, I think that there are some really specific use cases where it's very successful where nothing else can be. I worry a lot of times when we do studies is how much is the effect that we're seeing with it a result of the novelty, and will that go away when it becomes more mainstream? And I think that's a very strong possibility. The question that you're asking specifically around kind of accessibility and cost, the hardware and the software is actually much cheaper than the manpower necessary to keep things up. So headsets are $200, $300. We do a basic procedure, it's a $5,000 bill. If we can cut sedation out of that figure, it's $2,000 less, and that pays for the headset right there. We can send the kid home with it, and we're still saving money. So it's not so much the return on investment, it is the investment in people power to keep that headset charged, keep the software up to date, have someone willing to take responsibility for it, and finding ways for it to work into the system. So there's absolutely a hurdle there. I don't think it's monetary as much as it is buy-in, acceptability, especially within a very conservative culture that is medicine, and even more so in a conservative institute like Yale. I think at Yale, we were kind of the silly people for a while until we, found that desired NIH and CDC funding, which I could wax poetic on forever, saying only do it if you need it for the prestige, because it's crappy funding. But the hurdles are more around acceptance and maintenance.
Awesome. Yeah. All right, I think we've got time for maybe 2 more. So I'm going to go red hair in the black t-shirt in the back with the necklace. Doing my best to identify y'all here. Unlike my students, I don't know any of your names.
It sounded like a clue murderer.
Okay. So I actually just changed my question because of her question. So I'm curious now about how you all deal with accessibility for disabilities when you're talking about serious games. I think particularly, obviously, in the medical space, I have to imagine that you encounter a variety of disabilities, both temporary and permanent. And I'm a UX designer, and so accessibility is a big thing for me. And I know that when you're talking about, like, the more immersive the product that you are attempting to build, the harder it is to be accessible. And so I'm just curious about how you all work with or around that.
Great question. Did all of you go to some training on how to ask really good questions of a panel? Because these are all phenomenal. Anybody want to take this one?
Do you want to, guys? No? I mean, I have some, I feel like I'm just
Go for it.
Much talk.
It's all yours.
So we have a vaping prevention game, a marijuana and e-cigarette vaping prevention game that we are bringing into 24 Connecticut and Massachusetts schools. It's awesome, right? But we have to think about kids that can't be in VR or don't want to be or have physical disabilities or limitations with vision. Like, it's important. Even though we're not allowed to say the accessibility word, we're doing it. We have to. It's just we have to be responsible. So, like VR, you have to think about, okay, well, can we port this to the laptop? Can we think of other ways? Can we, cast it to a television screen and walk through it? We have to think about ways, and we have to be very thoughtful. So it's not necessarily, if it's in VR, some people can't play it. That is true. So what other ways can we make sure that they are still experiencing the same, it's not going to be the same, but as close as we can. But I think working with schools has always made that a priority. Most kids, sometimes we have schools that are 60, 70%, ESL. Like, we have to think about that. Even though we're not supposed to, we have to all the time. So VR, these new technologies with things on the face, covering, always think about casting, think about having kids work together in unique ways. Just be really creative about the thing you have and how can you make sure everybody can access it. Doesn't mean it has to be through a headset.
Awesome. So I am going to cap our questions there. But I know many of you have more questions, so I'd like to go down the line starting with Travis. I know I have some contact info and websites up on the slide deck right now, but I would like all of you to let all of our wonderful panel guests know where they can potentially find you if they have more questions for you, if you're willing to chat with them.
Just Google my name, you'll find me. There's like 3 Travis Faases in the world.
Yeah, my personal website is vktian.com on that slide. You can also reach me through email at vtian@usc.edu.
Same. There's only one other Kim Hieftje, and we're friends on Facebook, and we've never met, but we like each other's for like 20 years. It's been great.
Yeah, there are 2 other Asher Marxes. One's, I think, like 22 and much cooler than I am, and the other's, I think he's dead now. But yeah, there's our email. Check out our website, XRPeds.org.
Great ending note for the panel. The other Asher Marxes probably did. Thank you all so much for joining us. Can I have a round of applause for our amazing panelists?
Check out Erin's cool hat. If you haven't been, go down and check it out. It's a giant hat. You can't miss it.
Thank you all so much for being here. Have a
Great
wonderful
questions.
rest
Thank
of your
you.
MAGFest.